Hi. uh, I tried writing this stuff, but it's not working. I'm just going to just start the video. I'm sure you've probably read articles or watched videos about Mansa Musa. You know, the richest man that ever was, or probably would be. But I don't write that part till I read about Elon Musk's $1 trillion payday. You know, wow. But have you ever asked yourself why I got so rich? Quick answer: it is gold. But how did he get this gold? And how maybe is the very reasons Europeans started visiting the continent in the first place in search of rivers that were flowing with gold. And probably kicked off the colonization of Africa. So we don't really know much about Mansa Musa's early life, who would just have been called Kanku Musa at this point, as Mansa isn't really a name but a title given to the Emperor of Mali. Kanku Musa was most likely born in Ségou, the heartland of the Kintai clan of the Mandem people of Mali. He was either the grandson or grandnephew of Sundaita Keita, the founder of the Mali Empire. So he basically was a Nepo baby. The man we call Mansa Musa was born into the ruling dynasty of one of the richest empires in medieval Africa. But why was Mali so rich in the first place? So there's this thing I'm trying to do where I introduce large concepts to you guys in little nuggets. And in this video, I want to touch on this commonly held narrative that the Sahara Desert was this unpassable barrier that cut off sub-Saharan Africa out of global trade, and is basically one of the reasons why Africa is destined to be poor. It is not true at all, and a friend of the channel made this wonderful video that debunked this ridiculous claim. You should take some time watching the video after this one. It will be linked in the comment below, but that is after you watch this video. Okay. The reality was that medieval Africa was well connected in global trade through multiple trade routes. But for the Mali Empire, what mattered the most was the Trans-Saharan trade route, which was basically this network of market towns, cities, and caravans that linked the Silk Road through northern Africa to the Sahel and West Africa. And before some of you go typing in the comments, yes, I know the Sahel is in West Africa, but there's a reason why I'm separating it for this video, okay? What made Mali so special was that Sundaita Keita in 1235 CE defeated the king of Soso in the Battle of King Rina, uniting all the Manlike kingdoms to establish the Mali Empire. And with Mali controlling all the major trading cities, it allowed him to tax all the trades that passed through his empire, just like
the Mongols.
They had it all. Mali controlled all of the most important trading cities. They also controlled gold mines in multiple locations, some of them kilometers apart in different climates and regions of the continent. They also make sure that any raw gold that was dug up from the ground was the property of the Mansa, although gold dust was allowed to be traded, which, to keep the value of gold intact a bit. They also controlled the salt mines around Tagaza. Yes, salt. I know you would probably chuckle to yourself that salt is very cheap and that you could afford all the salt you would ever want. But back then, if you were able to get just one camel load of salt to the forest kingdoms of West Africa, you'll be able to trade all that salt for its weight in gold. That's what made the Trans-Saharan trade so profitable. Salt was literally worth its weight in gold, and this grew Mali to an obscene level of wealth. So by the 14th century, Mali had grown to become one of the richest and most powerful empires around. It controlled all of the most valuable land and resources. But empires, they are never satisfied, and Mali still wanted to expand. But not just its land or wealth, but fame. Mali wanted the world to know of its greatness. For some empires, they built pyramids. Others put a man on the moon. But for 14th century Mali, like most empires of its time, Mali wanted to share its greatness by conquering more land. For now, Mali was focused on expanding eastward until they got to the Atlantic Ocean. This brings us perfectly to Mansa Musa, the emperor of Mali around the beginning of the 14th century. When he came into power, Mali had already expanded to the edge of the continent, just looking over the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. But Mansa Musa did not view the Atlantic Ocean as the end of the world. He dreamed of expanding Mali beyond the ocean itself, to where dry land must have begun again. He was described as vehemently believing that the Atlantic Ocean, like all rivers he must have seen in his lifetime, must have dry land on the other side. So we don't have exact dates for this, but the date we are given is to the beginning of the 1300s. The story goes that Mansa Muhammad commissioned 600 ships, half of them filled with gold, water, and provisions they will need for years, and the other was just filled with men for his grand expedition to find dry land beyond the Atlantic Ocean. Today we know where they were trying to reach, who had been the Americas. This means that Mansa Muhammad's grand expedition set sail nearly 200 years before Christopher Columbus ventured into the Atlantic in search of Asia, only to stumble upon the Americas. So they set sail off into the Atlantic Ocean, hoping to bring good news to the Mansa. It took maybe some months, but only one ship made it back with a report that went like this. After they set sail from somewhere along the Senegambia coast, it took some time for them to reach the open ocean, where the currents became too strong and began to destroy the ships. Seeing the carnage before him, the captain of the lone surviving ship commanded them to turn back, assuming that all the other ships were already lost to the current. Mansa Muhammad was very stubborn about this report. He refused to accept this report that his expedition was a lost cause. He then readied 2,000 ships, half of them filled with men and yes, the other filled with provisions. We went through this. The only difference was that he was going to lead this expedition himself. But before he left, he made one Mansa Musa his regent, setting off to never be seen again. It's really an interesting story and honestly a awe-inspiring one. To imagine that there was an African expedition that aimed to go to the Americas 180 years before Europeans got there by accident. That's if you do not count the Viking expedition, but I may even make a video about it. If you want to see that, leave a comment below. And while you are down there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Okay. But there's one giant asterisk about this story. And it's why historians do not take this wonderful story seriously at all. Our main source for this wonderful expedition is Mansa Musa himself, who told the story in Cairo when he was asked how he became the emperor of Mali. The reason why it's very important for me to bring this fact up is that when Mansa Musa became the emperor of Mali, there was a lot of rumors going around that he must have assassinated the last emperor. And there was this other nasty rumor that was floating around that he probably accidentally killed his mom while he was struggling for the throne. With all the negativity surrounding him, Mansa Musa needed to do something to not just clear his name, but to complete the task of his predecessor, which is to put Mali on the global stage in a big way. The story of Mansa Muhammad's expedition, if we are going to take Mansa Musa as a reliable narrator, shows that Mali for some time had already been trying to declare itself onto the world. It had already tried going south towards the Atlantic but failed, and the next big thing for it was to try to expand and declare itself onto the Islamic world, which had gone through a golden age, and with the religion spreading through the empire and the region itself, it was the perfect power move for Mali. For Mansa Musa, the Hajj, which is this spiritual pilgrimage in Islam, presented him with the perfect opportunity to declare Mali's arrival on the global stage with a grand entrance. But there were also political reasons for him to go on the Hajj, which would have bestowed on him barakat, which is a divine blessing from God for completing the Hajj. He hoped that by completing this holy journey that he will have more political clout in a region where Islam was fast becoming a dominant political force. Now, unlike today where anybody can hop on a plane going to Mecca for the Hajj, the longest direct flight to Mecca I could find is from Sydney, which is like a 15-hour flight. But back then, the Hajj was a very dangerous journey that took months to complete and years to plan for. It was very common for people to die when attempting it, like Mansa Sakura, who died while attempting the Hajj almost a decade before Mansa Musa. And it was also very rare for kings and queens to leave their kingdoms and empires back then, because they'll probably not be in power by the time they came back after being away for a very long time. But for Mansa Musa, he was determined to carry out this project. But a grand project like what Mansa Musa was attempting required a well-detailed plan on how best to show off Mali's power and dominion over his people and resources. It took about 10 years for him to gather all the resources and things he would have needed on his Hajj. So what did he need? For starters, he needed gold. Lots and lots of gold, which was generated from taxation, tribute, and trade. He also needed people to carry all this gold and resources that he needed and to tend to his heavy need on the journey. From the records available to us, Mansa Musa's entourage for the Hajj was 60,000 people, which is more people than a field sold out Cape Town stadium. To gather this number of people, Mansa Musa would have needed to wage constant war for 10 years, capturing 6,000 people per year. So after gathering everything he needed for his legendary journey to Mecca, Mansa Musa around the second quarter of 1324, with his entourage of 60,000 people, was set up from the royal capital of Nani, heading to Cairo. But why Cairo? So again, back then you couldn't just walk to Mecca. You needed someone who knew the way and terrain to the holy city. Remember, it was a very dangerous journey through a very hostile desert. And for people from Mali, Egypt was the closest place where they could find someone who knew the safe path to Mecca. But this was also part of Mansa Musa's plan, as he hoped to get the Sultan of Egypt to recognize him as an equal. This singular act could spread the name of Mali throughout the Islamic world. From Nani, they would get all the way to Biri, which was a major trading city in the 13th century. From Biri, they will make their way through Tuwat, where they will hit the first problem. Tuwat was a salt mining town where slave labor was used. But maybe the sanitary conditions of the towns was terrible. Who knows? What we do know is that Mansa Musa's entourage fell sick from a foot infection. From here, they will make their way to Gat, an important oasis in the Trans-Saharan trade route. From Gat, they make their way through the northern Sudan into southern Egypt, coming out of the desert route onto the pyramids of Giza. He set up camp at the base of the pyramids for 3 days. Maybe he was taking in the views from the pyramids. I mean, at this time, the pyramids of Giza were ancient to everybody that was alive. And maybe Mansa Musa was in awe of the pyramids. Now we get to the part where Mansa Musa would do some generational flexing. This was his one and only chance to present Mali to the world. And he delivered. On the 19th of July, 1324, Mansa Musa will make his grand entrance into Cairo. The way it's described is that he was on a magnificently dressed horse with an army that numbered about 6,000 men, which were all marching ahead of him. In front of his army were 500 slaves, each of them holding a 2 kg golden staff. I ran the numbers and each of those staff will cost $189 million. Wow. Mansa Musa's entrance into Cairo was so grand that it caused an uproar amongst the people in the streets, which surely let the Sultan of Egypt know that Mansa Musa was in town. Afterwards, Mansa Musa lodged in what is described to be an hotel garden at Bekat al-Bashar, where he was welcomed by an host of very important dignitaries, including the governor of Old Cairo. Now, it was now time for Mansa Musa to execute on one of his major objectives of coming to Cairo, which was for him to get the Sultan of Egypt, one of the most powerful dignitaries in the Islamic world, to accept him as an equal. But unfortunately for Mansa Musa, the Middle Ages is filled with this weird, delicate move for power, which was basically designed to size each other up. Mansa Musa's grand entrance had already proved that Mali was this great and rich empire than anything the Egyptians could imagine. It was just a question if the Sultan would accept Mali as an equal to 14th century Egypt. To maybe flex on the Sultan, who knows? Mansa Musa sent him a gift worth $26 million. He also sent him other expensive gifts, which kind of forced the Sultan to invite him to the Citadel. Here is where Mansa Musa will face his second challenge to its objective. Usually, it's customary for people to prostrate themselves before the Sultan. But doing so will also mean that Mansa Musa is also prostrating Mali as a lesser kingdom before Egypt, which would defeat the entire purpose for him to even come on the Hajj in the first place. As he entered the Citadel, before getting to where the Sultan was sitting, Mansa Musa was, I don't want to use the word cunning, but let us say he was a tactful politician. He said loudly, "I make obeisance to God who created me, then bow down." What he basically did was to put the Sultan on notice that he wasn't bowing down to him, but was bowing down to God. You know, he was very demure, very mindful. Yes, it's a 2-year-old meme. What are you going to do about it? Afterwards, they exchanged greetings and had a discussion on what brought Mansa Musa to Egypt. Mansa Musa told him about his intention of wanting to go to the Hajj, which the Sultan made sure that everything he would need, from camels to security to escorts, was all prepared. The Sultan even gave Mansa Musa a palace in the city of the dead. The meeting of the two monarchs had been summed up to be very wonderful, but for Mansa Musa it was a big political disappointment, as the Sultan did not offer Mansa Musa a seat, which in a way signaled that he did not view Mansa Musa as an equal. After his meeting with the Sultan, Mansa Musa would cool off his nerves by going on a spending spree. He didn't haggle over prices, just paid whatever he was asked. I mean, the records even go to show that there were merchants that boasted of taking advantage of him. The merchants sold them robes, swords, and cloaks at 5 times their value. And it wasn't like the Malians were stupid or, didn't know what these things were. It's just that they were trustful people that were being taken advantage of. I couldn't really find a good source for how much Mansa Musa spent in Cairo. We know that he brought about $2 billion worth of gold with him on his journey, and he bought so much and gave away so much raw gold to the needy and the poor that by the time he left Cairo, he distorted the value of gold so much that gold became worthless and caused inflation that lasted about 10 years before the value of gold began to recover to its pre-Mansa Musa's level. Mansa Musa remained in Cairo for about 3 months, waiting for Dhul Hijjah, which is the month for Hajj, before leaving for Mecca with the Egyptian convoy. From Cairo, they would travel to Medina and then Mecca. Mansa Musa was recorded giving away gold to the poor and needy throughout his stay in the Holy Lands. Now we get to the part of the story about Mansa Musa that I am very, very sure you have never heard about. Now, so far, the Hajj had been a mixed bag for Mansa Musa, but his journey back home was going to be a complete disaster. After spending about 3 months in the Holy Lands, it was time for Mansa Musa to return home. But somewhere between Mecca and Cairo, Mansa Musa's caravan lost sight of the Mahil, which is the ceremonial object that represented the authority of the Sultan of Egypt. The Culture Genie has a wonderful video about the Mahil in the Islamic world. You should please check it out. Anyway, Mansa Musa's caravan was lost in the desert for several days. And if you know anything about deserts, it's that they have extreme temperature swings. They are extremely hot during the day and sometimes fall into freezing temperatures at night. As a great number of Mansa Musa's men, followers, and camels perished during the unforgiving desert cold, with only a third of them making it out of the desert, eventually reaching the city of Suez. Mansa Musa lost so much in the desert that when he returned to Cairo on the 11th of January 1325, he was completely broke with no money to return back to Mali. And before you start letting your imagination run wild, we are still talking of Mansa Musa. His definition of being broke isn't anything compared to me or you. I can imagine it was more of a problem of how he could get his people back home, with new people that were with him, from Ethiopians to Arabians to Andalusians and Turks, how to get all of them back to Mali. To fund his return home, Mansa Musa had to sell the palace that was given to him by the Sultan as a gift, who also gave Mansa Musa some support to return back home. But this wasn't enough. To cover the rest of the bill, Mansa Musa had to go to the merchants that he had been so kind to, only for them to prey on this opportunity by charging him ridiculous interest rates when he borrowed gold from them. But in it all, Mansa Musa could now leave Cairo with his head up, as he had completed the journey and had something only a few had in 14th century Sahel: the Barakat. Mansa Musa will return to Mali using another route, passing through Gademes instead of Jaffa. From here he headed south instead of west, avoiding Towat, where his caravan got the foot infection. They would then head to Gat to replenish on water and food, before passing through either the copper mines of Takenda or Ten Naka's outpost, and then making it to the city of Gao. Now, back then, Gao was an independent city-state before Mansa Musa's arrival to the city, and maybe because of them misjudged the size of his caravan and army, Gao surrendered to Mansa Musa and Mali without a fight. In taking Gao, Mansa Musa unified the Niger, Senegal, and the Gambian valleys, controlling an empire with over 20 million people. Probably the largest empire in Africa at the time, and one of the largest in the world. From Gao, Mansa Musa's caravan would head to Timbuktu and also absorbed it into the empire without a fight. He would commission the construction of the Jejinjebra Mosque. From Timbuktu, Mansa Musa will return to the royal capital, where he will also commission the construction of the Great Mosque of Jenne. Though he may have not achieved everything that was on his list, he did achieve distancing his name from those nasty rumors. But honestly, the effectiveness of this is somewhat, because most of the records we have about Mansa Musa does not come from local sources in Mali. They come from Egyptian records. As local historians, both written and oral, are completely mute on his legacy and just skip Mansa Musa altogether. He did, however, succeed in growing and strengthening his empire through his new religious authority, and most importantly, he cemented Mali as one of the richest empires to have ever existed. On the global stage, Mansa Musa's wealth for a very long time became the benchmark to describe wealth for monarchs in the Islamic world. Manuscripts and stories were written about the event and traded all the way to Andalusia, which was a Muslim kingdom in what we know as Spain today. From here, the Genoesians, the Venetians, and Catalan merchants heard stories about the Great Black King. Fast forward to 1375, Abraham Craig creates the Catalan Atlas, where this famous image of Mansa Musa comes from. And it comes with the caption, "This Black King is called Mansa Mai, Lord of the Negroes of Guinea. So abundant is the gold which is found in his country, that is the richest and most noble king in all the land." From here, I'm sure you know how history plays out. European kingdoms initially sent these explorers to Africa to look for the rivers flowing with gold. And from there, how this happens, that opens the gate to a very unfortunate chapter in history. I just decided to try something new. It's been a while I've released anything. At least this year it has been 5 months. I hope this is a format you guys like. You could get more of these videos while I still work on the long videos that honestly take half a year to make at this point. And if this is something you like, please leave a comment below. And while you're down there, please remember to like, share the video. If you are new, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. I have longer videos without my face for now in the chat. I'm sure you would like them. And stay tuned, more are coming. Support the channel. Please support the channel through Patreon. My Patreon members probably are floated somewhere in the video, I don't know, but I really enjoyed making this and I hope you guys liked it too. Till next time, I'm Bamishe. Bye.